So before I start the portion of the presentation from grants coordinator position, I actually want to introduce the congressman. He has a couple of remarks that he would like to share with all of you. So, Congressman, you're welcome to share now.
Okay. Well, Emma, thank you. Everybody can hear me, I hope. Maybe give me a thumbs up, Emma, if you can.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. Look, I appreciate everybody coming on. I'm driving around the district today, which is the norm when I'm home, which I don't get to be home enough. But I appreciate you guys coming on. I know we've got a mix of chiefs, officers, borough, township managers, and probably some others I'm missing in there. But I hope you guys learned something today. I hope you understand how committed my team and Emma in particular really is to delivering federal money to help you. I know your jobs, especially for the officers on here, they're not easy. And we will do everything we can to get federal money back home and to you for the important work you got to do to keep folks safe in my district. I should also talk about, as I suspect some people may have questions, been a weird couple of days with these executive orders and the OMB guidance around trying to freeze federal funding. Just know that I will fight as hard as I can to make sure we are still getting the federal funding we need, that we're not seeing these kinds of grants shut off that I know so many of us rely on. And frankly, I'd like to see more of us get here in my district. So I'm going to kick it back to Emma, and certainly appreciate the folks from the Department of Justice being on to work with us. Emma, back to you.
Apple
Thanks, everybody.
That's
pumpkin.
great.
Apple
That's
pumpkin.
great. Thank you,
Stay
Congressman.
corrected.
All right, so we are going to keep moving forward here, and I will do a little bit of housekeeping. So for folks, I will be recording this conversation with the DOJ, so don't, panic on taking extensive notes. You will receive these slides. You'll receive all the slides from DOJ, and you'll receive the recording. If you have any questions, I encourage you to put all of those questions in the chat. We on, the congressman's team as well as from DOJ will be answering asynchronously throughout the conversation today. However, if a question is not answered, I'll be recording all of those extra questions and we'll be able to reach back out to you. So please add all of your questions in the chat and we will do our best to answer there. Great. And as far as the run of show for everybody on the call, we'll be hearing from three different offices at the DOJ today. First from COPS, then OJP, then OVW. We'll be going over grants. We'll be going over federal funding, tips and tricks, different, ways that you can stay involved. Then I will quickly go over some community project funding questions that CPF. If you've ever seen the congressman taking pictures with these big checks with different police departments in PA 17, that's typically from CPF funding. So I'll make sure to touch on that and the difference there. And then lastly, we'll just make sure you guys stay in touch and have the resources available to reach out to our office and stay connected. Okay, so without further ado, I am happy to introduce our different speakers for today. So first, I will introduce Heather. Heather is a senior counsel in the Office of Legislative Affairs, focusing on legislation that impacts the department's grant-making components, child exploitation prevention efforts, anti-human trafficking initiatives, and civil rights issues. Previously, she has worked at both the COPS office and OJP, handling congressional and intergovernmental affairs. She has her master's in legislative affairs from George Washington University and a law degree from American University, Washington College of Law. So Heather, thank you so much for joining. Next is Michelle. Michelle Garcia serves as the Deputy Director for Programs at the Bureau of Justice Assistance within the Office of Justice Programs. In this role, she provides leadership and accountability for over 7,000 open and active grants totaling over $6 billion. She has extensive experience developing and implementing programs that include evidence-informed practices that respond to, intervene in, and prevent violence. From 2015 to 2022, Michelle served as the mayoral appointed director of the District of Columbia Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants, administering the district's grants programs that serve victims, survivors of crime, justice-involved individuals, and youth. Prior to joining district government, Ms. Garcia spent over 20 years working with victims of stalking, sexual assault, and domestic violence in rural, suburban, and urban settings, advocating for victims' rights on a local, state, and national level, and providing training to multidisciplinary audiences across the United States and internationally. Michelle also received her Master of Public Policy from the University of Chicago. So, Michelle, thank you so much for joining today. Next is Erica. Erica Lacey is an outreach specialist in the Office of Violence Against Women's Policy, Communications, and Strategic Engagement Division, where she helps increase awareness about and access to OVW and its grants programs. She joined OVW in July 2021 as an executive assistant and senior program analyst contractor in the OVW front office, handling scheduling, special projects, and speech writing for the acting director. Then moved to PCSC in 2022. Lacey has more than a decade of experience working with the Department of Justice, including as a deputy press secretary in the Office of Public Affairs, an investigative analyst at Interpol Washington, and a staff assistant for the Justice Management Division. So, Erica, thank you so much for joining as well. And lastly, I'll introduce Cheryl. Cheryl Thomas is a senior policy analyst in the communications division of the Department of Justice's Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, which is the COPS office. Some of you might be aware of that. Serving as a liaison to law enforcement stakeholder associations, members of Congress, and their staffs and media outlets. The Communications Division also manages the COPS office website and social media platforms. Cheryl said that she's been working with the COPS office for nearly 30 years, and she said, please ask her anything. So, Cheryl, I'm sure we will be taking you up on that. And lastly, my name is Emma Dawson. I am the Congressman's Grants Coordinator, and happy to answer any questions related to today's conversation. Outside of today, I'm happy to meet with you in person, or, over a Zoom call like this. So, all right, without further ado, Cheryl, if you want to start us off with COPS, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Let me just start sharing my screen. So, can you see that?
Looks good.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. As Emma said, my name is Cheryl Thomas. I am with the COPS office, and yes, it's been almost 30 years with the COPS office for me, so hopefully I could answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the COPS office itself, and then the grant programs that we ran in 2024 as we await our 2025 budget. So just for those of you who aren't familiar with the COPS office and what we do, we were established by the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, the crime bill, and everything that the COPS office does, all of our grant programs, our training, our technical assistance, everything is aimed at advancing public safety through community policing. We have been appropriated more than $20 billion since 1994 to accomplish this. It's been for officer hiring, crime fighting technologies, a wide variety of different innovative programs, and we have funded approximately 138,000 officers over the years. In 2024, our budget was $664 million, so we're anxiously awaiting what we have for 2025. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of our primary programs, the ones that you'll be most interested in, I believe. So the COPS hiring program is what our office is really known for. It's gone by a number of different names over the years. Those of you who've been doing this for a while may have heard of it as the Universal Hiring Program. It's had some other names, but we've had COPS hiring program since 2011. And this is for funding sworn entry-level full-time law enforcement officers. These can be newly hired for your agency, or they can be rehired officers that have been laid off due to budget cuts, or who are scheduled to be laid off on a set date. These grants provide 3 years of funding. It's over a 5-year award period. I know that sounds a little strange, but we know that agencies can't hire on day one of an award. So it's 3 years of funding, but it gets spread out, so you don't have to worry about needing an extension from the minute you get the grant. You can spread it out over that 5-year period. There are different parts of the application that focus on you'll have to pick a problem focus area, what the officers would be mainly focused on during the course of the application. We do have a cap. We've had it in place for several years now for 100. We are capped at providing $125,000 per officer, and that's not per year, but that's over the life of the grant. So we can only provide up to $125,000 per officer during the grant, unless you receive a waiver of the local match. That's due to severe fiscal distress, and that would be part of the application process. So again, this is our largest program, the COPS hiring program. It's the one I usually get the most questions about, and there's a lot more to tell you, but this is the easiest way to give you a quick snapshot. School Violence Prevention Program. This is to improve school security at K through 12 schools. It is primarily for target hardening, metal detectors, locks, lighting, camera systems, bulletproof glass, but it can also be used for training for officers to prevent student violence, coordination with law enforcement, panic button systems, which is expedited notification for an emergency, and any other measures that don't fit neatly into those areas that provide a significant improvement in school security. We have anti-heroin and anti-methamphetamine programs, but this is funding that goes to one state-level agency per state each year. So Pennsylvania's received this funding for a number of years under the anti-methamphetamine or anti-heroin program, depending on the year. But what the state-level agency has to do then is partner with local law enforcement agencies, so that in that partnership structure, as through a task force, all local agencies can benefit. You're not receiving the funding directly, the state receives the funding, but then you can benefit from it through the task force structure. These are investigative programs. So for example, anti-heroin funding would be for investigations and activities related to the distribution of heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, the illegal distribution of prescription opioids. It wouldn't be for treatment, for example, or for Narcan. And it's very similar for the anti-methamphetamine program. Again, it's for investigative activities. Community policing development. This funding is for new strategies, new ways of looking at policing, best practices, testing innovative strategies. And each year it can be different depending on how it's appropriated to us in our budget. In 2024, we were able to fund crisis intervention teams and embedding mental and behavioral health services with law enforcement. We were able to fund accreditation programs to help agencies gain accreditation, and pilot projects for innovative ideas. It's seed money for creative ideas to advance community policing in a specific area. The Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act is to improve mental health and wellness services in law enforcement agencies. This can take on a number of forms. It can be suicide prevention programming. It can be officer family services, stress reduction. This can be for an individual agency, or we can make an award to a regional group, a consortium. Might work better for several agencies to band together on this type of service. And it's not just to benefit sworn officers, it's also for civilian staff. Safer Outcomes. This was a new program last year, focused on de-escalation and crisis response training for law enforcement. De-escalation tactics and alternatives to use of force, responding to individuals in crisis, that sort of thing. We do have a dedicated funding stream, the Tribal Resources Grant Program, and that's for officers and for basic equipment and training. And then lastly, we do have a technology and equipment program. However, this is CPF funding, community project funding, which is congressionally directed. And Emma will be discussing that a little bit later on and how that works. But it's basically for a wide range of technology and equipment. COPS also offers training. We have a very robust online training portal that provides free training for individual officers, for academy classes, for entire law enforcement organizations. We have dozens of courses available, and we are always adding more. We also fund a variety of in-person training. We have trained the trainer courses focused on, we've got active shooter training, we've got school resource officer training, and a variety of other topics. And then we do have technical assistance available. All of this, everything you're seeing on your screen, is at no cost to an agency. For technical assistance through our collaborative reform initiative, if an agency approaches us with a problem that they're looking for assistance on, we can figure out what level of assistance you need, and then we make sure that it gets to you. So we've got 3 levels. Our technical assistance center is sort of the entry level where you've got a specific problem and you either need to be matched up with the right type of training with other agencies that have gone through similar issues, with getting some people on site to take a look and help you out. That we can do through our technical assistance center. We also have 2 more levels of technical assistance that are in depth. The critical response program is basically, those are after action reviews for agencies that have experienced high profile events and are looking to what worked, what didn't type of review, have that done. And then we do organizational assessments. And this is the most intensive form of technical assistance that we offer, doing an entire look at your agency from top to bottom. Just some helpful hints as you prepare to apply for our programs. And ours generally launch between March and May. It's all depending on the timing of when we receive our budget, make tweaks to existing programs based on changes to the our budget and things that need to be adapted in the new year. So between March and May is when you should expect to see ours open up. All COP solicitations stay open for a minimum of 60 days. We do our reviews then, if it launches in spring, we do our reviews during the summer, and we make our obligations by the end of the fiscal year, which for us is September 30th. Please start the process early, start it well before the deadlines. You want to make sure that you've included everything that needs to be uploaded, that if you read the instructions thoroughly. Please save your work as you're going along. There are 2 different deadlines. We have the first part of the application done through grants.gov, and the second part is through Just Grants, which is DOJ's system. So pay attention to those deadlines. We have, and you'll have these from the slides, links and websites for tutorials on the COPS office website on how to apply and in case you run into problems. And we also have a contact number there and other information on how to let us know if you're running into any issues. On our website, which you see right there in that second paragraph, we have a link to our resource center, which has hundreds of publications available to you. These can be downloaded. Some can be obtained hard copy, all free of charge. And we've got our contact information for how you can get in touch with us to get onto our notification list if you'd like to be added to our Gov delivery list for when our solicitations launch or our new publications come out. And our social media information is there as well. And that's it in a very quick rundown. That concludes my part of the presentation. So I will stop sharing my screen. And I will turn it over to my colleagues with OJP.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Spector, and within OJP, I am a division director for congressional and intergovernmental affairs within the Office of Justice Programs. My colleague, Dept Dave, will be, who set this up for OJP, will be handling the slides. To start off, I'm going to go through my slides very quickly, and so that we can devote most of the time to Michelle Garcia, who will be focusing on BJA resources, including the JAG program. So the Office of Justice Programs provides resources to federal, state, local, and tribal justice programs, justice systems. These resources can be funding, they can be training and technical assistance, they can be research, they can be information dissemination, a wide variety. They can be training and technical assistance, a wide variety. And next. There are 6 program offices within the Office of Justice Programs. I will go through them very briefly, with the exception of the Bureau of Justice Assistance. As I mentioned, Michelle Garcia will be taking a much deeper view of that. Okay, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, among other things, they run the National Crime Victimization Statistics Program. That is one of the primary measures of crime in this country, along with the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports. Next. The National Institute of Justice is a primary research arm of the Justice Department. They evaluate programs across the country. They may be best known for the standards they administer for law enforcement body armor, so that law enforcement agencies can go and see what types of body armor meet the standards and can make educated decisions about which body armor to purchase. Next, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, as the name indicates, they support youth crime prevention. They support improvements to state juvenile justice systems and also a variety of child protection efforts. The Office for Victims of Crime, they support victims across the country, both through state formula programs and also through discretionary programs that address specific types of victims, such as victims of elder fraud, victims of human trafficking, and victims of mass violence incidents. Next. The SMART Office, they run the National Sex Offender Public Website, which you may be familiar with. They also provide grants to states and tribes to help them administer the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act. Next. The DOJ program plan is online now. I'd certainly encourage people to take a look at it. I will note, however, that we are waiting for new political leadership that may have their own views on our programming, so that information can change. Next. There are three types of Department of Justice grants. I always say that the discretionary gets the most attention, but the formula grants are actually where most of the funding goes. In particular, the Justice Assistance Grant Program, which you'll hear more about shortly. Next. All of our grant data from FY21 to the present is available on our website. You can search by state, and you can also search by congressional district. Next. We have a number of resources for prospective applicants, and echoing what Cheryl said, we certainly encourage that well before you apply for a grant, that you familiarize yourself with these resources and get as much information as you can ready so that you'll be prepared once the solicitations go live. Next. The Just Grants management system, which Cheryl touched on, that's our primary grant application and grant administration system. And as Cheryl said, I certainly encourage you to get familiar with that as much as you can before you submit the grant application. We have a variety of grant resources here. And this information will all be sent to you. Next. Here's some additional resources. We're on Facebook and we're on Twitter. And this is my contact information. Please feel free to give me a call or send me an email if you'd like more information. And with that, I will turn things over to Michelle Garcia with our Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you to Emma and to the Congressman for the opportunity to provide some information today about the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And thanks to everyone who is joining us this afternoon. It looks like we have a wide range of representation from local law enforcement to government to grant writers. And so we hope you'll be able to find some useful resources and supports from this presentation today. The Bureau of Justice Assistance, as Adam mentioned, is one of the 6 program offices within the Office of Justice Programs. We were created in 1984 to reduce violent crime, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, and we'll continue our efforts around strengthening the nation's criminal justice system. The way we do this is really in three ways. Through investments, which is probably the piece that you are all most interested in. We have over 70 planned notices of funding opportunity this year that will support activities across the criminal justice system. As Adam mentioned, some of those we have posted, but they are subject to change. And I'll give you a resource shortly about where you can sign up to receive information as it's made available. Most of our awards are discretionary or competitive grants, but I'll talk more about one of our formula awards in just a minute. The second way that we support the field is through sharing knowledge, and we have an expansive network of training and technical assistance providers similar to the COPS office that work around research, development, and delivering what works to build capacity and improve outcomes, finding best practices that can be replicated across the country. Much of our training and technical assistance is available regardless if you're a grantee or not. So even if you've not received BJA funding in the past, I encourage you to visit our website to see if there's training and technical assistance that might be able to support you in your work. And then lastly, through engagement, we are always out in the field, connecting with you folks who are on the ground, doing the work to hear what your needs are related to the criminal justice system and ensure that we're developing resources and providing funding and supports that are responsive to those needs. We do this, as I mentioned, primarily through funding. We have many discretionary awards, but as Adam mentioned, our largest and perhaps our flagship grant program is the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program. This funds across 9 purpose areas. And so you can see that this really is the breadth of the criminal justice system. So the systems that we traditionally think of, law enforcement, court, prosecution, defense, corrections, community corrections, reentry, but also the supports that touch people in the criminal justice system. So drug treatment and enforcement programs, crime victim and witness programs, mental health programs, crisis intervention programs, and also supports for planning, evaluation, and technology improvement, because we know those infrastructure pieces are really critical as well. Next slide. The JAG program is both a state and a local grant program. States and localities receive funds based on their resident population as it's reported by the U.S. Census Bureau and on violent crime data reported to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. So that data is used to create a formula to make allocations to states. State administrating agencies then apply for those funds. The states can then sub-award those funds out for a variety of programs to meet purpose areas across their state. Additionally, states also have requirements to directly pass through funds to local entities. Based on the formula, there will also be local jurisdictions that are directly eligible for JAG local awards, and that will submit applications to BJA for that funding. When the NOFOs are released, we also release the allocation tables so you can see if your jurisdiction is eligible for a local award. So as an example, this was the allocation table for fiscal year 24. So you can see the municipalities, counties, and townships that were eligible for local awards, again, based on population data as well as the violent crime data. Next slide. Because states really get the largest portion of the JAG awards, they are also, as I mentioned, passing through those funds to jurisdictions, and in many cases are releasing their own requests for proposals or notices of funding opportunities or solicitations so that local entities can apply to the state administrating agency for JAG funding. In Pennsylvania, the JAG state administrating agency is the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. And so if you're not already familiar with the commission, I encourage you to go to their website, look at their materials, their resources, find information as to when they make funding available within Pennsylvania that you could also apply directly for. Next slide. To give you a sense of the amount of funding that we have available to JAG, in FY24, we made 56 state awards. So that's all 50 states, the District of Columbia, as well as each of the territories, totaling over $180 million. To date, we've made 871 local awards, totaling over 80 million, and we still have a few more that we're working to make. So we really work with those local jurisdictions to try and get them to be able to submit their applications so that we can get the funding out to them. Similar to COPS, we typically release our NOFOs in the spring, and so the FY25 JAG NOFO will be released later this year. Again, if you go to our website, you can find more information about the JAG program overall. Next slide. And so you'll see a variety of resources related to JAG, including a fact sheet that really goes through, again, what JAG fundings can be used to support, how the amounts are calculated, and lots of additional information. Next slide. I also encourage you to, like I said, check out our website to see about all of our other funding opportunities. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you to our website, but the first element you should see is an opportunity to subscribe to get announcements from BJA. So as we release funding opportunities, as well as tips for applying for funding, you can get notified of those when they become available. I've also included my email. If you have any specific questions about JAG or any other elements of BJA's funding, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. With that, I believe we are turning it over to OVW.
Hi, I'm Erica Lacey. I'm an outreach specialist with the Office on Violence Against Women, and let me get my screen up. Okay, hopefully this is visible for everybody.
Looks great. Yeah, thanks, Erica.
And I hope today everyone will learn more about OVW, our grants, funding opportunities, and how to apply. If you do not already know OVW, the office was established in 1995 to implement the very first Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. You may have heard the most recent Violence Against Women Act reauthorization went into effect in March of 2022. OVW's mission is to provide federal leadership in developing the national capacity to reduce violence against women and administer justice for and strengthen services to all survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. These 4 offenses are what we refer to as the 4 crimes within the Violence Against Women Act, and they are indeed violent crimes, and there are federal statutes that can hold accountable those who commit these offenses. The main mechanisms by which OVW reduces and prevents gender-based violence and helps survivors is through our grant making. You can see some of the stats on this slide that in FY24, we awarded more than 880 awards, totaling $684 million. In addition to our grant funding, we support research on issues impacting survivors of violence to understand the efficacy of best practices when it comes to the 4 crimes of VAWA. By generating more knowledge about strategies for serving victims and holding offenders accountable, communities that benefit from our funding will be better equipped to align their work with practices that are known to be effective, and they will be more capable of generating empirical knowledge on the efficacy of new and promising ways of doing their work. OVW also offers training and technical assistance, or TTA, to grantees and potential grantees. When you receive an award, OVW connects you to a network of TTA providers that represent multiple disciplines across the nation to ensure that grantees are successful in implementing their goals. TA is national, but it can be tailored to regional specific issues and challenges. The primary purpose of the OVW Training and Technical Assistance Initiative is to provide direct assistance to grantees and subgrantees, as well as potential grantees and potential subgrantees, to enhance the success of local projects with VAWA grant funds, as well as build capacity for service providers, whomever they may be, to ensure safety for survivors across all communities. And finally, OVW regularly coordinates and collaborates across DOJ, as well as with other federal agencies, to ensure a whole-of-government approach to intersecting issues that impact survivors. This includes the pillar under the National Plan to End Gender-Based Violence, it reinforces that there should be a federal coordinated community response. Now we'll go over some of OVW's grant programs. First, here are some examples of activities that can be funded with OVW grants. Direct services to victims, legal assistance, prevention education. As noted on the slide, this is not all inclusive, and some activities may be allowable under some programs and disallowed under other programs. So please read the notice of funding opportunity very carefully. 4 OVW programs are formula, which means that the enacting legislation specifies how the funds are to be distributed. Under OVW's Stop Violence Against Women Formula Grant Program, states and territories are eligible applicants, each of which receives a base amount of $600,000, and then the remaining funds are awarded based on population as determined by the census, and that includes tribal populations. And then the funds, once they get to the states, are split up by a formula. So 30% of STOP funds are allocated to victim services, 25% to law enforcement, 25% to prosecution, 5% to courts, and the remaining 15% is at the state's discretion. The Sexual Assault Services Formula Grant Program, also known as SASP, is the first federal funding stream solely dedicated to the provision of direct intervention and related assistance for victims of sexual assault. This grant program funds states and territories to support rape crisis centers and other nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, including faith-based and other community organizations that provide core services, direct intervention, and related assistance to victims of sexual assault. The State Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Coalitions support the coordination of state victim services activities in collaboration with federal, state, and local entities engaged in violence against women activities. Eligible applicants are state sexual assault and domestic violence coalitions. And then finally, the Tribal Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Coalitions Grant Program builds the capacity of survivors, advocates, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian organizations, and victim service providers to form nonprofit, non-governmental, tribal domestic violence and sexual assault coalitions to end violence against women. These coalitions provide education, support, and technical assistance to member service providers and tribes. And the eligible applicants are coalitions, and this notice of funding opportunity is an invitation to apply. OVW's Tribal Affairs Division contains 4 discretionary grant programs, the largest of which is the Tribal Governments Program. It currently funds nearly 200 tribes and tribal organizations, has 12 purpose areas, and tribes and tribal designees can use this funding to support a broad range of responses, such as shelter programs, law enforcement, SANE and SART programs, development and implementation of tribal codes, response to missing and murdered Indigenous folks, and more. The Tribal Jurisdiction Program, in 2013, the VAWA reauthorization that year restored jurisdiction over covered crimes to tribes that were implementing special tribal criminal jurisdiction over Indian country. And then VAWA 2022 expanded the list of covered crimes and closed jurisdictional gaps that prevented Alaska Native tribes from exercising STCJ. The Tribal Jurisdiction Program was established in 2016 to support tribes in planning and exercising this jurisdiction. The Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program, or TSASP, was created in 2005 as part of the Sexual Assault Services Program and is funded by set-asides from that program. Currently, OVW funds over 40 tribes and tribal organizations to provide direct sexual assault victim services under this program. And the Tribal Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Program began as an initiative that started after an Attorney General listening session in 2014 in Indian country, where participants expressed deep concern over the lack of attention that Indian country cases were receiving at the federal level. Over the years, through this special initiative, OVW has worked with more than 10 tribes to work with their partner partner U.S. Attorney's Office to hire a tribal prosecutor that could be cross-designated as a Special Assistant U.S. Attorney, or SAUSA. Tribal SAUSAs work closely with the Tribal Prosecutor's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office to coordinate on domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and certain sex trafficking and child sexual assault cases. The programs that are not formula programs are discretionary, meaning OVW is responsible for creating program parameters, qualifications, eligibility, and deliverables in accordance with the authorizing legislation. We will highlight some of these grants in the presentation. However, the remaining grants can be found on our website, and we'll link to the website later in the presentation. This list is not inclusive of all of the new programs and initiatives that we've released since VAWA 22 has passed. Sorry, I think it's skipping some. And then who should apply? Depending on the grant, it could be community-based organizations, tribes, states, or territories. Please read the eligible applicant section carefully under the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. Now we'll go over some of our grant programs in detail. The Transitional Housing Program can fund transitional housing, short-term housing assistance, and voluntary support services, including counseling, childcare, transportation, and life skills education and/or job training. The Culturally Specific Services Program, as defined by VAWA, culturally specific means an organization whose services and mission are primarily directed towards racial and ethnic minority groups, which are defined under the statute and provided in the NOFO. Eligible applicants are community-based programs whose primary purpose is providing culturally specific services. And I'm going to run through the rest of these slides a little bit fast because I know we're a little bit low on time, but you will receive these slides as a PDF. The Sexual Assault Services Culturally Specific Program, or SAS-CSP, creates, maintains, and expands sustainable sexual assault services provided by organizations that are uniquely situated to respond to the needs of sexual assault victims from culturally specific populations. Proposed activities may include, but are not limited to, participating in site visits, peer-to-peer exchange, and technical assistance events, developing relevant policies and procedures, delivering culturally specific sexual assault training to staff and leadership, and many other activities. Again, the Notice of Funding Opportunity will have a lot of details. In FY24, OVW launched this program, which is also known as the Abby Honold Program, and awarded $3 million to 6 projects. The Abby Honold Program awards grants to law enforcement agencies to train officers to conduct trauma-informed and victim-centered investigations with the goal of incorporating trauma-informed techniques designed to prevent re-traumatization of the victim and increase in communication between victims and law enforcement, as well as stakeholders in a coordinated community response. Now we're going to focus on the basics of applying for an OVW grant. Previously, we discussed formula funding. STOP and SASP go to each state and territory as prescribed by congressional statute. To apply as a subgrantee, you can reach out to your state administrator. You can find their contact information and more on our website. The link is provided here. And again, you'll receive this PDF, so you can actually click on that link. To apply for discretionary grants, which are the rest of our programs, you would apply directly to our office, not through a state administrator or a coalition. And you are never too small to apply. You just need to demonstrate that you have the capacity to manage a federal grant or that you can form a partnership with another organization. You can go to our website using the QR code on this slide to sign up for notifications when our grants are released. We're releasing a lot currently. You can check out our Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, release plan. You can look at old Notices of Funding Opportunity. That's the closed NOFO link right here. We have, I think, about 10 years in our archive list on the website. So you can go back and look at last year's is probably the most relevant. If the program existed, you can look at that Notice of Funding Opportunity to help you prepare your application It's a great guide for the upcoming Notice of Funding opportunity. You should set up your SAM, Just Grants, and grants.gov accounts right now if you're planning to apply. It's critical to ensure your registrations are active and up to date. If you need to create or renew your SAM account, you should start this process at least a month before the solicitation's grants.gov due date to ensure you are well positioned. Make sure that you fully understand the program goals, the purpose areas, the eligibility requirements, any program and application requirements. Note the priority areas, the deadlines, and the formatting requirements. You can do this by reading the NOFO from cover to cover. And then again, if this year's isn't posted yet, last year's is a great guide. Attend the live or pre-recorded pre-application information sessions. These are on our website. You can view last year's. They're in the resources for applicants page and under program-specific resources. Most of our grant programs will have extensive pre-application calls with Q&A sessions with the program managers who developed and manage those awards. For those who want to apply, stay tuned to our social media channels. And if you have questions or just want to confirm what you are thinking about a certain requirement, contact the point of contact that's identified in the NOFO. There should be an email address. We want to hear from you, and we want you to have all of the information that you need to prepare a complete and competitive proposal. All right. We encourage you to visit our website often and join our mailing list. And of course, here are our social media links. If you have any questions about the programs we shared today, contact information is listed here. I am one of the only people that checks this inbox, so please reach out there and I'll see it. And thank you so much for your time. We hope to work with you soon over at OVW.
Yeah. Erica, thank you so much for going through those different grant programs and extensively showing us contact information there too. And to all of the presenters from DOJ, I just really appreciate you taking the time to share your contact information. And for everyone on the call, if you want an introduction or if you need help connecting, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help introduce you to all these amazing people. So I just have 3 kind of wrap up things to share with you all. So I'll go back to share my screen. Great. So as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of the times you'll see the congressman in pictures like this with a big check with a lot of money. And a lot of people often think that comes directly from us, but in reality, these, different police departments and municipalities have applied to community project funding through our office. This has happened over the last 2 years, and we are expecting this to be an option for everybody for fiscal year 26 community project funding. However, we have not received those guidelines yet. And so as soon as we get that information, you all will be the first to know. I'll be sending it out in our grants newsletter, and I'm sure the congressman will send it out in all of our forms of socials. But I just wanted to clear up, if you've heard about CPF in the past, what that exactly is. So I'll just share here that CPF allows members of Congress to provide greater input on how funding will be directed to specific state or local governments or eligible nonprofit recipients. Members of Congress are allowed to submit CPF requests to the Appropriations Committee. There are no guarantees that these community projects will be funded and the projects will be competitively evaluated by the Committee on Appropriations. So you can see as a House member, the congressman can choose 15 each year, and we have selected 15 for fiscal year 24. We've selected 15 for fiscal year 25. And an application will go out, hopefully, for fiscal year 26 as soon as we get those guidelines. But just to clear it up, from the Department of Justice in fiscal year 24, there were specific funds budgeted to the DOJ that went specifically to appropriating community project funding. So you can see here that the Burn Discretionary Community Project Grants, that was money specifically appropriated for CPF through DOJ. And then under the Office of Community Oriented Policing Services, COPS, the technology and equipment grants were selected as a place of funds to be appropriated to CPF. So if you have any questions about that application process, or if you are yourself a recipient from CPF and are curious about the next steps, if you're waiting for funding still for that fiscal year 25, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to walk you through kind of what the timeline is for that funding. Great. And just to wrap us up, we are super honored to say that we've helped secure over $2.6 billion in federal funding here in PA 17. In this, PA 17 map right here on the right, you can see these are all of the community project funds that we selected a few years ago. So it gives you kind of a look into what that CPF funding could go towards. And yeah, as far as stuff that, I can specifically help with in the congressman's office, if you're looking to request a letter of support, we have that form on our website. I'll make sure to put that in the comments. We're happy to write letters of support to accompany your applications at the local, state, or federal level. If you're just looking to see what is out there as far as researching what federal funding could be available, I'm more than happy to help run that kind of research report for you. I can work with our team in DC to create that report so you can see a list of different grants at the federal level that could be applicable to your project. I definitely recommend that as a good place to start. And then lastly, please subscribe to our grants newsletter. Every month I put out, highlights of funding in the district as well as particular grants that have timelines and deadlines coming up. So you guys can make sure to stay in the know from all different departments and agencies. And then lastly, community project funding is one of the ways that we are able to help with federal funding in the district. However, it's still due to be determined for this next cycle. Great, and let's stay in touch. This is the phone number for our Carnegie District office. That's the best way to reach me on a day-to-day basis. This is my grants email, pa17grants@mail.house.gov. And then all of the information that I just shared about resources can all be found on our website under grants information. So I will stop sharing my screen. I'm going to put that in the chat just as a final takeaway for everybody. Great. I've just put the grant subscription, grants info, and then my email and number. So that's it. Thanks everybody so much for joining. Again, if you have questions, reach out. We're super honored to support your programs and continuing to, help constituents in PA 17. So thank you again for joining. DOJ, thank you so much for helping, and we'll all be in touch. See ya.